Hey everyone, Bill and Carrie with KB Tricks.
Hello.
Where are we? What are we doing?
We are in the Luxor Hotel in Las Vegas, and we are about ready to go tour the Titanic Artifact Exhibit.
As you walk in, you can see one of the models of one of the submarines that they used to explore the Titanic. When we walked in, they gave us cards, one for males and one for females, with stories about the passenger. So you can look up to see if they survived or not. What's the name of the person I gave you?
I got Mrs. Stanton Abbott.
And I got Frederick Goodwin. So we're going to find out at the end.
What class are you?
What class am I?
Yeah.
I have no class, third.
I'm a third class passenger as well.
This front room with some of the photos of the passengers. I'm sure we're going to see this guy often. He was the captain. First artifact we're going to see is a ventilating port, which is what they would have to allow fresh air into your cabin, and they would close those if the weather was rough. Welcome sign telling you that we are traveling back to April of 1912. We're going to encounter incredible artifacts, stories of passengers and crew. All these posters, they'll have year, so this is 1907. And talking about how they decided they were going to build the Olympic and the Titanic. And here are some of the architects who were designing the ship. You can see some of the artifacts that they recovered. Like this large wrench, what I would say is a little over 2 feet in length, and some nuts and bolts. They used more than 10,000 workers. It took 2 years to build a Titanic's hull. It took another 10 months to complete the interior and substructures. This is a storage water heater and some pipes. Hot and cold taps. These are pulley and hooks and a rope. The rope was still attached to the pulley when they recovered this. This has a little bit of information about the captain of the Titanic. He was actually supposed to retire, but they asked him to stay on to foresee the maiden voyage of the Titanic. So he was supposed to retire after the voyage. Throughout the exhibit, they've seen a couple of these videos where they talk about the Titanic, and some of these are talking about some of the passengers on the ship, giving a little bit of backstory about them. The exhibit continues to be chronologically. For example, this is a photo from April 10th of 2012, where the ship is leaving dock. Some artifacts recovered from the boiler room, including this hunk of coal. A lot bigger than what you would use for your grill. This is actually the family, the gentleman that I was given for my passenger. And it talks about him and his family. This hallway here is supposed to be for the cabins on the ship. And this piece of information is interesting. There were 708 third-class passengers that shared 2 bathtubs. That's it. 2 bathtubs. You could also rent ear listening devices so that you can listen to information about the exhibit there. This is for this. This is what it looks like inside a third-class passenger cabin, where it's basically 2 sets of bunk beds. And not a lot of space here, and just like one little table. These are some artifacts recovered from third-class cabins, including doorknobs and light bulbs. We're leaving third class and we're going to go into first and second class. There's a couple serving dishes from second class, including toaster rack and serving dishes. Some more of the plates and dishes that were found on board. Some of these are White Star, but these are actually, in this case, owned by travelers. These are drink crafts and flower vases, and these were all owned by the cruise ship. The way you could tell is that they would have the emblem of the White Star Line. Like there's one right there, the other one over here, the third one is around here, and those symbols were on the items owned by the cruise line, that to differentiate what people own and what White Star owned. Here's a better look at that logo that would be on the items owned by the White Star Line. So this item would be on dishes and other things to show ownership. There's a red flag version of that logo. We just left the grand staircase area, which they would not allow photos or video in, but you can still kind of see it there. I'm just showing you this for posterity reasons. I find this stuff fascinating because I like photography. This is photography developing trays that hold chemicals to process photographs. These are camera tripod legs. So there were people who photography was becoming a popular hobby at the time. So there were some people on the ship that had this to travel with them. So this is some of the currency recovered. Even though it was a British line, most of the currency recovered was American, because there was a lot of American travelers. Either your American travelers going back to the U.S. or they had already changed their money to American for the trip. Here's a setup example of what it looked like in a first class cabin. First class cabin ticket would cost about $2,700 per person, or the equivalent of today's currency to be about $57,200. That's American. I can't imagine spending $57,000 on anything more than a house. Here are some of the items that you would find in the dining halls, whether dishes or silverware or serving bowls. Here's where we're going to start setting up for the tragedy, so to speak. They had some ice warnings for other ships from the day before. This is what the promenade deck or the A deck would look like at night. And one of the issues that they're saying for the Iceberg is that it was a moonless night. So it was very hard to see icebergs, because they would find them by the reflection of the moonlight off of the surface of the iceberg. And without that moon and that extra light source, it was hard to detect icebergs at night. This is kind of nice and peaceful, just like how it would be on a cruise.
Yep.
Little.
Except for modern cruises have lights underneath where you can see things.
But this kind of shows how similar what we experience on our cruise is to what they were experiencing the night before everything was happening.
Yep.
I wonder what kind of thoughts would go through someone's head when they heard this. This write-up is actually kind of eerie to read. It talks about how they saw the iceberg, but it was too late, and how the people who were on the outlook couldn't see because they didn't have binoculars, and then there was a slow response to turn, but then the iceberg scratched the hull, causing the leak. This is a replicated iceberg. I've seen this on other tours that I've done of Titanic exhibits, but normally they would let you touch this. With COVID, they won't. But normally they would let you touch this. That way you can feel how cold it is to touch the ice with your bare skin. Because a lot of the people on the ship who got in the water tried to climb onto the ice, but it was almost worse to try to touch the ice directly than it was to stay in the water. So a lot of people just stayed in the water. On display in this room, they have some of the navigational equipment. For example, this is a compass that they would use to try to navigate on the waters. And this is a compass bowl. They had 4 compasses on board the Titanic. This is another board that's here to read. They're quotes from some of the survivors talking about their experience when they hit the iceberg. And this room is kind of showing underwater how it kind of felt and looked like after they discovered the remains of the Titanic, 50 years later. When they discovered the Titanic, they would find things like this, dishes. They would be in a cabinet that would lay down in the sand, but the wood rotted out around it in the seawater. So the dishes were basically perfectly stacked like dominoes on the seat floor. Here's a photo of one of those stacks as they found it on the sea floor that they demonstrated in that case that I just showed you. This is a replica of what the Titanic looks like, at least the front half, after they discovered it on the ocean floor in the Atlantic. And you can see the damage that had been done over time. So the ship broke in half. If you ever saw the movie Titanic, that was accurate. How the ship basically broke in half from its own weight after the front went into the water. And then I'm assuming up here is supposed to be where the Titanic struck the iceberg and where the damage, or the source of the damage was. A quote here from one of the Titanic exhibitors that they need to try to recover as much as they can from the seafloor, because eventually the sea salt and everything will disintegrate too much that they won't be able to recover anything whatsoever from the ship at some point. This is amazing. This is actually a 26-foot by 12-foot section of the Titanic that they recovered from the ocean. And on this diagram here, it actually shows you which section it is of the ship. So it was kind of about 2/3, or the beginning of 2/3 back. So middle of the ship roughly, of a couple of the cabins. And I actually remember watching a video or seeing this on the news when they recovered it. This was from a recovery mission in 1998. This whole thing weighs about 15 tons. It's amazing to see all this rivet work that they've done to build the ship. It's all the straight line here and cross section. This is just incredible to see. This is the back side of that section of the Titanic. So this is what would be the interior. Again, you can just see all the work done, and it's actually incredible to see how thick the glass is here on the portholes. See if I can get you a better view of that. I want to say that's at least an inch thick. Just amazing technology for the time. This is just one of those things that it's just hard to fathom, is that with this, over 2/3 of the souls on board lost their lives from this tragedy. In this room is where they're going to list the names that survived or were lost at sea. And here's where we're going to find out the names of the people on our boarding pass and what their fate was that day. Carrie found her.
I found my person. I did survive.
Okay.
This is Stanton Abbott.
What was her name?
Rosa Stanton Abbott.
Okay. But you also said
she had 2 sons, but both of them sadly perished.
Oh.
You perished.
Oh. My person paired to is Goodwin. Mr. Frederick Goodwin.
Looks like the whole family did.
Oh. They were all lost at sea, huh?
Yeah.
My person was married with 6 children. If you either can't find the name that they gave you, or you're just having trouble reading, you can always go to these computers at the end, and there's a QR code on your sheet, and you can scan it. So there's mine. There's Goodwin and his wife, and all 6 children perished in the sinking. And they actually provide some more backstories about the people. And like, this is Carrie's. She survived. Both of her sons perished, and she did physically, mentally recover, but it took her a long time, and she remarried. All right, we just walked out of the exhibit, and what did you think, honey?
You know, I'm always very fascinated by stuff with the Titanic, so I enjoyed myself. I had a good time seeing that big piece in there.
Yeah.
That is amazing. This is actually our 3rd Titanic exhibit we've done. There was a traveling one that visited our science museum a few years ago, and then we've also done the one in Branson a couple of times. But they all have different pieces, and again, that big piece in there is just crazy. It's amazing.
Yeah. I've always been fascinated with it because I remember when I was a kid watching the news, and they had like a special on because they had discovered the remains of the Titanic. So it kind of goes back to me, and then when it pops up, it's just one of those things that still interests me today, even though it's been, nearly 30 years since they discovered the Titanic. So just another interesting exhibit kind of thing. And I think they're related with at least one of the other ones that we've seen, like the one in Branson, because it was the same kind of system that they use. But
Yeah.
will we do it again?
Oh yeah, I always love looking at this stuff.
So what are the details on this?
$32 per person. I'm not sure if there's discounted rates for kids, but that is the rate for adults.
We would definitely do it again if we find it interesting. We want to thank you for joining us. Please do us a favor, like, share, and subscribe to anyone out there. Until next time, I'm Bill.
I'm Carrie.
You watch KB Trucks. Until then, good luck and have fun.
See ya.